Welcome to Second Opinion. I'm Rosemarie Belts, and if you've ever wanted a second opinion on some of the hottest topics in health and wellness, you're in the right place. Each episode, I sit down with experts, innovators, and even a few disruptors to bring you fresh perspectives on the issues that could change your life, from age rejuvenation and brain health to the weight loss drug revolution and how to reinvent your career. Together, we're going to dig into the latest research, question what's hype, what's real, and give you the insight you need to make your own choices about health and wellness. So, if you're ready for a second opinion that's engaging, enlightening, and maybe even a little unexpected, let's get started. Today, I am talking with the fabulous Dan O'Connor. Yes, I said fabulous, about something we may all have experienced, handling bullies both at work and in life. Dan is a renowned expert in communication. He is a best-selling author and a creator of an array of communication courses. For over 20 years, Dan has been empowering individuals and teams to navigate difficult interactions and reclaim their power. Known for his innovative approach to mindful yet very tactical communication, Dan helps people shut down those toxic coworkers, narcissistic bosses, and rude employees while fostering meaningful relationships when that's desired. His courses and training and resources equip the 21st century professional with the tools they need to thrive in today's workplace and beyond. And there's some other very good credentials that I'm going to let Dan tell you himself, but I wanted to say first, thank you so much for being here today. I'm very excited.
Thank you, Rosemarie. It's a pleasure and it's an honor. I appreciate you having me.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to start off first because I looked up the definition of a toxic person because I've personally have dealt with this.
Uh-huh.
And many of my friends have dealt with this. Pretty much like we said, everyone has dealt with this. And I just thought it was interesting. It said, it's someone who brings conflict and negativity to your life. But for me, and maybe so many other people listening or watching, it really felt like a lot worse than that. Just bringing negativity every day was just the minor damage that came along with that. So you've been helping people communicate effectively for over 20 years. And I'm going to let you talk a little bit about who you've worked with, what you shared with me right before the pod. What inspired you to focus on handling these types of difficult people and bullies in your training?
Well, it was kind of happened as most things do that are important in life by accident, where I used to, I started out giving conferences on technical analysis of the stock market. And I was a stockbroker at the time. And I thought that's what I was meant to do. And when I went into audition for a company that was hiring for speakers, I went in thinking that I was going to go in for technical analysis of the stock market. And they told me, no, we're going to cast you in the communication role. And I'm like, no, because I was not an extrovert by nature. And I thought, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. But they saw that I was using communication tactics, which I was, throughout their time with me. And they said, nope, that's what you're going to be doing. And I said, oh, okay. And so I started to help people who dealt with the same things that I did. And it was my mother when I was. Did you?
Good old moms are our biggest advocate.
my when I was really little, like in third grade, I had this bully named Stuart Stockmo, and Stuart Stockmo, who I've spoken to in recent years. So I'm going to tell you this, and it's okay. But Stuart Stockmo was my schoolyard bully. And I would come home every day and be like, Mom, and she'd say, my mother used to be a nun. And she, of course she wasn't once she was my mother. But my dad was a Christian brother, a brother. And when I would come home, she was very like, you'd think of as like a nun school teacher, because that's what she was.
I went to Catholic school. Anyway.
Yes, okay, you get it. Okay, so I had my own nun. So I'd come home and she'd say, all right, what did he do today? And I'd say, well, okay. And I'd be embarrassed, as we all are, to tell her like, it happened again. And so she'd ask me what happened, and then I'd tell her what happened. And then she'd say, okay, the next time he says that, you say this. And I'd say, okay. So she'd say, repeat that. And I'd have to repeat what she said. And if I didn't get it right, she'd say, no, not like that, like this. And so I'd repeat the things. And then I would come back and tell her how they worked. And all of a sudden, I remember one day it worked. And so that was the beginning, now I realize, of my energy vampire slaying training. And so I have to give it all to my mom because she was the one to this day, she's still saying, repeat that. No, not like that. Repeat after me. And I'll have to repeat after her. And I'm very grateful for her. But that's in a real nutshell. That's how I got
I
into this.
love it.
First my mom, then they cast me in the role.
Wow. So this was all, I love how it's really organic. You know, good old childhood traumas always get us to where we're supposed to
Yes.
be.
Good old childhood.
My journey, yeah, same between health, you know, you do one thing, but you know you're born to do something else. And eventually you have to go through something then to get you where you're supposed to be, share your message with the world. And that's how it translated for you and it
That's exactly right.
unraveled. And so it's super authentic, which came across in your videos, which is
Thanks.
why eventually that's I used your videos. So
Great.
that's why I
Great.
exactly.
Yeah, I'm just spreading the word because it's something that I've always struggled with.
And many people do.
Yeah.
And I love your authenticity and your transparency.
Thank
And
you.
you're welcome. And with that, I'm going to read some stats because it's always good to have some
Okay.
statistics. So, according to a workplace bullying survey from 2021, overall, about 50% of Americans have suffered abusive conduct at work. The prevalence of bullying has increased almost 60% in the last decade. So, that number is a lot. And then also, 50% are affected by it, and 66% are aware that it's actually happening.
How many percent are aware that it's actually happening?
66.
Wow. The rest are unaware.
Exactly. Yeah, they're unaware. And what was startling to me was that one, how it's increasing, how much, and also how many people are they watch it, but then they also feel like they can't do anything about it as well. They don't think, right? We get in this cycle because I know even in my work environment where other people were aware, but it's like that you don't really want to get involved because you could be next or you've
Right.
already dealt with it too. Right? And so with that, all these numbers, why do you think? I always like to get to the root cause of things, but I mean, why? You know, what do you think is going on here? And what over the last few years, and it's even more prevalent. It seems like when any even catastrophe or major, unfortunately, cat event happens, somebody was bullied.
You know, it's because of the recent political landscape and how it's changed without
Yeah.
becoming political, because I know this isn't a political show.
Of course.
I saw a definite change in like overnight in the way people treated one another at work, starting about
Okay.
10 years ago, more or less, 8 to 10 years
Okay.
ago.
About a
And
decade. Okay.
I understand that so that's one thing. I think the political landscape, and when I say the politicals, I don't just mean our politicians. I mean the news, the way we discuss politics, the way we are relating to one another in a political sense, and the way it's like taken over as if that's the only thing we are, if we have certain
Yeah.
views. And so it gives everybody permission, it seems, to either hate, ostracize, bully one another. And it's just all of a sudden people started doing that about 8 to 10 years ago. Much, much, much more than before. I mean, it's just overnight you could see a big difference. And I think regarding people watching it, I always try to tell people if you're witnessing something that you know is not right, it is very powerful to stand up and leave. Our presence is sending a message that we're going to tolerate whatever is going on. And if all you can do is stand up and walk out of the room, that's at least a message that you're sending that I'm not going to be party to this. Or if you have, in addition to that, if you have the words to say something such as, I can't be party to this, or I will not participate in this, because it is true we tend to make excuses for ourselves, but if we are witnessing something, and I understand that whole, if we stand up for somebody, if we walk out of the room, all of a sudden we could be the next target. And I understand we have bills to pay. We have families to take care of, and we have other issues, apart from that in our brain.
Right.
I get that, but if we are witness to it and let it go, that the worst thing about it, as you know, Rosemarie, if you've dealt with it, if I'm being bullied from somebody, they aren't the ones that I am dreaming about that I'm thinking about when I go to sleep at night. I'm thinking about the people who stood by and watched it happen. It's those faces, the ones where I thought, E tu Brute, I thought you were my friend and you stood there and you thought and you let it happen. That's even worse. So I'd encourage people to at least not lend their presence to the crime at hand, because that is even worse sometimes, right?
Yeah, because then you question, well, I don't get it. This person knows this. Why are they that you question everything. Then you start
That's
to really question
it.
everything.
You question your own sanity and your own belief
Yes.
systems. I think that's why gaslighting has become such a big topic these days, because that's the worst, when all of a sudden we're starting to question our own sense of reality and our own sanity, and people will do things to encourage that feeling in us, and it's horrible. It's horrible. That's a horrible feeling.
It's terrible. And to circle back around what you were saying, so basically, it's almost like, yes, without getting into politics, because this is health,
Right.
but they
Right.
are connected to your health. But
Sure.
anyway, but it seems like just what has been accepted from everyone is that anyone can say anything at any time
Yeah.
without any kind of consequence to
Yeah.
anything.
Right.
Like, there's no consequence. It's almost like, and then it spills over to then everything that we're doing. So I just, so when people are listening, that's what you were trying to get your point across. It's just like, that's like the green light, like it's okay then. I don't feel this way. Yeah, all of a
Censor
sudden,
me. I can say whatever I want. Yeah, and no matter how unloving it is, no matter how hurtful it doesn't make any sense. We're all of a sudden right.
yeah. I was like, where is this coming from? Was it COVID? Because everybody felt like there was all of a sudden like an imaginary wall there. There wasn't, any kind of contact. So it's like I'm hidden behind either my phone or my screen, or I don't know what it was. But I'm in healthcare. So I was at work during COVID. So those people have no excuse.
I
They were
saw, and I
still,
was I was thinking about that, how you were right there. You're dealing with the worst of the worst, and
yeah.
that must have been very difficult, because then you had people, I'm sure, telling you what you were seeing wasn't really happening.
Right. So we've got that. Dan, we can talk about that on a whole other show.
I'm sorry, yes, right, right.
No,
But
but yeah, but the gaslight, I mean, there were so many things, like it kind of goes into gaslighting. No, this is my reality. It kind of comes back to
yeah.
that again. And it happens. I don't know what it is, but like you said, it's more apparent than ever, where people are now saying, "Did you see that? I was just gaslit into that task. That's not even my job. How am I doing that
Yes.
person's job? That's not even." And I'm gaslit into it. You're tricked. I'm like
You're
tricked.
tricked. Yes, it's that perfect storm. I was insulted, and I think for some reason, it's not just politics. I think for some reason, it's as if we have had a perfect storm. You know what I think it is, Rosemary, and I
What?
think you'll probably agree with me. I really believe, although people say this throughout history, I think right now we are at a point in our evolution where we are evolving into something else as a species. And I think in part of that is going to be that, when do you remember, the movie The Fly? Do you remember seeing The Fly?
Yes.
Okay, like
I'm that old. Yes.
me too. Yeah, when the fly's about to evolve, it kind of
Yeah.
goes through that metamorphosis process, and it
Yes.
feels like we're just testing. It's like the last. That's what it is. It's like the last of the dinosaurs are screaming and howling because they need to say that nasty thing or do that nasty thing before, thank goodness, I think we're about to go into a whole new evolutionary level. Because you know how they say that we are about to like my nephew, they say that he's about to have the option to live like 1,000 years with AI and all of the things that we have available to us.
Yes.
I just can't. So that's my positive viewpoint, is that I think it's okay that we are just expressing the very last of the worst of us because we're about to leave it behind.
Yeah, it's like one big experiment.
Yeah, you
Kind
know?
of. Yeah. I mean, I'm like thinking this is really provoking, thought provoking. That was a great thing that you said, because even when you just look at people, even how we communicate, it's weird for even somebody to call you. It's even at work when you're getting a passive aggressive, it's either an email or a text message. It's not like they've come to your desk or they're doing it from a device.
That's that's a huge part of it, I'm sure. Yeah, that's it. Is that all of a sudden people can hide behind. That's it. I
Ding
haven't thought
ding.
about that in a while, but it's true. We are at a place where the whole generation of communicators are used to being able to say things anonymously and hide behind the internet. And all of a sudden we're dealing with these snipers, at work,
Yeah.
and these situations that we just didn't deal with before, I guess. And you're right.
Yeah.
And people are emboldened in a different way. And they think, since they've seen this bullying online, which was so easy to do, they're now doing it in person. So I think it's
Yeah.
the evolution of a lot of things.
Yeah.
Well, you're
Yeah.
provoking my thought process.
Oh, good. Well, I'm gonna stay tuned for your next video.
Okay, yeah.
I'll be looking out for that.
Yeah.
All right. With all these numbers, I'm going to throw some more at you.
Okay.
So, adding to those stats, statistically, women face bullying and toxic behavior more often in the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you really think that this disparity exists? And how can women empower themselves? I will tell you, all of my bullies in life, from Stuart years it was, mine was
Stuart
Kelly.
Blackmo.
God bless Kelly, wherever she is. I think she's in the Midwest somewhere now. But anyway, maybe she'll listen one day. Women bully women
Yeah.
as twice the rate they bully men.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, I know there's a lot of things that I just rattled off here, but what are your thoughts on the women being more bullied, women bullying women, and how can women empower themselves?
Well, I know that that's true because when I did not know the extent to which women would bully each other until I started doing speaker training. And I would train different speakers how to be more effective. And when I was reading the reviews of the first woman speaker that I have ever trained, I had no idea. When you could read you've, I'm sure, had reviews from, you've spoken and seen reviews.
Yes.
Okay, so, I could read 1,000 of my reviews as a man, and I mean, I'm always shocked at how people do not throw Rotten Tomatoes and stuff, because there's a lot you could pick at with me, and throw stuff. But in terms of physical things, like, it doesn't happen with men. Then I started reading a woman's reviews. I couldn't believe it. Like, starting from the very first one, her panty lines were showing the whole time, and it was distracting. She needs to wear a bra. Her hairstyle, it's all this personal, horrific attacks, which mostly came from women. And I was just clueless as to what was going on until that moment. And I remember I was really, really sad. I mean, it was difficult to think, oh my gosh, that's the type of thing you have to deal with, all apart from everything else. But I think it's because, this is just my opinion, I believe that it's because, when we only have one relationship, we have a relationship with ourselves and with our maker and with everyone else on the planet, and it's all really the same thing. And if we're not good with that, I think it's kind of a vicious cycle. Women are taught to judge themselves so harshly that then they judge other women because it's the same relationship, the same way. And they think, just as men do, by the way, but in different areas. Well, I have to deal with it. Now you're dealing with it. And I just think that it's easy to say and to sit here and rationally think that woman is saying what she's saying to another woman because that's how she feels about herself. And, it's easy to tell somebody, hey, that's not about you. It's about her. So don't take it personally. But when it's coming personally at you, I think you have to be really vigilant I think we all do, but especially women, I think, have to be vigilant in things such as, and I know you're going to, but I shouldn't say I know, but you may think this is total cornball, but I used to think things like affirmations were ridiculous. I used to think all I could think of was Stuart Smalley, when he would look in the mirror. Do you remember that? And I'm like myself. That's what I thought it
I'm
was.
good enough.
Yes, I'm worth it. Now I get it. I get it, how we are sent messages constantly all day long telling us that we would be okay if we did this, or we were, we would be worthy, or until we're thin, until we're this, whatever it may be. We're just sent messages constantly saying, if you do this, you may be more whole, but you're not whole. You're not good. You're not worthy. And if we don't take the time to send ourselves messages, literally, by affirmations and telling ourselves who we are, there's that person inside of us that's like, hey, if I'm only hearing that and you're not even standing up for me, well, then I guess that must be true. And so I think that is kind of what's happening is I don't think we were as nasty to one another as we are today before. I just think marketing and the way we are able now to sit, because of cell phones and all of the internet and all of that, we receive so many messages so fast all day long, and so many of them, the vast majority, are negative. I think that just comes out. I think if people protected themselves and the messages that they hear more and told themselves the truth of the matter and paid more attention to that person inside, it would help. But I think that women in particular receive so many of those messages all day long. I can't imagine how it could not possibly come out and be directed towards other women.
I see what you're
It's only
saying.
logical.
So really it just even comes along with like emotional intelligence. Some people, because I could feel a certain way, but like you were saying, I'm not going to project that on somebody else, where somebody else, they just keep coming at you. And it is hard because even though you are self aware, when you are even that type of person, there's only really so much you can take. So basically, you're saying
That's
just
it.
that's it. You have your limits. And like you're
Yes.
saying, just realizing, maybe even try to walk away, I guess, if you can. I don't know. It's such a it's just like a slippery slope because it's either you confront the
That's what I
person.
say. It's a slippery slope.
It is like you either confront them or it's like, how do you, I don't know, but I guess you're saying too, like just really work on yourself, which is why I liked your video, because really you're really focused on basically just you can't control others, you can only control yourself and how you respond. I feel like I'm getting the
Yeah.
message.
But I do think it's very important, for example, at work, to have the right words, to be able to tell somebody, hey, you and I don't have the type of intimate relationship, so I don't know what I did to make you think that, but we do not. And to let people know, hey, but of course we have to then make sure we are not engaging in the type of intimate communication. I just went through Rosemarie, I accidentally released a book that I was working on Amazon, and I was just using it kind of like I don't know if you've ever self-published or anything like that, but I was in there using their kind of tools, and the next thing you know, I accidentally released this book, which was not finished, but it's called The Rules, and it's now available on Amazon, and it's in the top 20 of its category. I was very impressed with that since it was an accident. But if you look at that, I have rules there which really kind of help remind us all. They're just 10 rules, but you have to like go into work and remember certain things. I can't be familiar with you because then how am I supposed to, when you if somebody crosses the line, hold you to a standard that I'm not holding myself to? And I have to recognize, we don't have a personal relationship. And if I can have the right words to remind other people, that helps. If I can take time in the morning to remind myself of who I am, why I'm here, and what I want, that helps. If I can have loving relationships and remind myself, that, instead of worrying about not being weak, or, people will ask me frequently, is that a sign of weakness if I say this or do that? And I have to remind people the opposite of weakness is love. And so if you just focus on being loving, that is going to really uh, solve the vast majority of our problems. But we have to be loving with ourselves and with everyone else on the planet. And my point is, I think it's all like you were saying. It's a slippery slope, and once we think we have it down, comes a new master teacher to show us, you thought you had it. You thought you were a master of your dominion. Well, watch this. And I think that that's kind of like our curse and our blessing. If we take time to try and be better, just a more perfect reflection of who we know we are, we're constantly going to be challenged. And I think in my own life, and I'm sure in your life, when I decide, okay, my goal is I'm not going to let that person get to me now, or I'm going to once you think you've accomplished the goal, up comes the next master teacher who's going to be much, much more difficult, but it's for my own benefit. And we might get it wrong 99% of the time. But if we have some tools and invest in ourselves, if I can get it right twice tomorrow, I'll take that, and just take one step, closer to the loving version of myself that I know I'm trying to be. It's not about being perfect, and we will feel bad, and we need somebody in our life to remind us of what's real. But little by little, if we take little steps, I think that's what in the end creates those people at work where you're like, wow, nothing seems to get to them. They are always on point. They always have the answers. Nobody can rattle their cage. And it seems like it's natural and effortless. It's just because they worked at it for so long. And I think that's what we need to do. Just take one little step today, one little step tomorrow, and we'll be that person. And then I think, Rosemary, you know what it's like? You were talking about your niece. What is her name?
Oh, I've got two have been who went through this. Uh, Layla and Evelyn. Evelyn's the 7-year-old and Layla's the 12-year-old.
I think it was Evelyn. I'm not sure. But you
Yes,
know
it
how
was
like
Evelyn.
yes,
Yes,
yes.
7 years old.
Okay. That's the you know how when they will tell you how you have inspired them, and they'll say something just little, didn't mean a whole lot, but they'll be like it reminds you that you are inspiring them, and it takes your breath away, and it makes
Yeah.
like everything so worthwhile. Um, I think those we'll get more of those if we are the people that we are trying to be as much as we can. And
No, that's
we'll
beautiful.
get our fuel for the next battle in those comments from your nieces. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. Yeah, no, that was really helpful, and I really like those tips. So thank you for that.
You
They were
bet.
very clear and helpful. And okay, so I'm gonna kind of go back into the employment
Okay.
landscape again. Why do you think that it's not getting it? I mean, I know personally many people they don't feel like it's getting addressed, even though we go through sensitivity training and we
Mm.
all go through this at a profession, even at high levels. We still have to go through those types of training, but it's not, it's almost like they don't want to hear it. I don't know. We do have a lot of other businesses at hand that we have to attend to, but I don't know. Doesn't
It's
feel
like
like
that
you're,
people use that training to do what they want to do, but get around the rules.
yes.
Yeah.
Well, and it's also, it's like things, even if you think something's anonymous, people don't think it's anonymous, but I don't know. I don't know if this for HR, anybody in HR listening,
Ha!
in that kind of landscape. But it's really not. It runs rampant, especially in healthcare. I don't want to down healthcare because I work with a lot of amazing people, but I know it's everywhere. I worked in news as well, but I don't know. And being the boss is the the bully. So it just says 52% of non-management employees, 40% of managers. So
Phew.
40% of managers, that is a lot. I mean, do you have any thoughts on that, how to deal with that specifically?
If it's your manager who is bullying you,
Yeah. And maybe
okay.
an example of how to, maybe this even example, like any advice or an example, how you can diffuse something like this without escalating it.
Yes. First, I'd like to mention I'm with you when what I've noticed is I have a lot of clients who are nurses, and there's something about professions that care for other people. Teachers, nurses are the top two toxic work environments that I know of. And I don't know exactly what it is, but I know that if you're in a profession where you're caring for others and it's a high stress, especially with teachers now, what they're dealing with. Uh, there's there's just something about that makes kind of behind the scenes people take out their aggression on each other. I've noticed
Interesting.
that it's a particularly difficult
Huh.
profession, nurses, when it comes to communication and toxic coworkers. Um,
Yeah.
you're not imagining that. That's the way it is. And in terms of if it's your manager or your boss, number one thing I was just thinking about that last night. You have to have freedom you have to have financial freedom. And that's a different thing to everybody else. But if you don't have financial freedom, and that just means for most people, 6 months income in the bank. And you're confident in your abilities and your skills and your reputation and all of that. So it all kind of goes together. But if you don't have that freedom that comes with knowing I don't need you, all of a sudden, this is just first of all, and I'll get to some specific what to say. But I think that if you have that if you have that knowing where I know that I don't need to be here, all of a sudden what you thought were the challenges and the problems and the energy vampires that are coming at you, they just fall away. And it's all of a sudden it's because of when you need that paycheck at the end of the week and the problems that you believe you're having, those are like level 1 problems. And when all of a sudden you go up a level, meaning I'm now here because I'm choosing to be here, what I thought was important, and these people who were coming at me, all of a sudden they're not coming at me anymore. And these things that I thought I was going to have to deal with, or that I was going to say once I reached level 2, I don't remember what they were, because now I have level 2 problems and they're totally different. But they might be bigger, but they're different. And now I'm choosing to be here. And so if you don't have that, you know what it's, maybe you don't, but I know what it's like, where
Yeah,
you
we've
you
all
need that
been
pay, right?
stuck.
And you
Yes.
can't say what you want to say because you need something, and that is such
Yeah.
a horrible
Horrible.
feeling, right? I mean,
Yes.
and you're telling yourself that this is who you are. And so you have to get out of that situation as quickly as possible if you're in it. And then when you are dealing with that, for example, if it's your boss or your manager, once you pass that level, then it shouldn't make any difference. And I would speak to them just as I would basically anybody else, because we don't share a intimate relationship where I'm going to have to worry about your feelings. It's more about processes than it is about people, where if you crossed a line or said something to me and you're my boss or my manager, I should be able to call you out on that and let you know in the same way as I would anyone else, because you don't hold anything over me anymore. If I don't get what I'm looking for here, then I know I'm secure in myself and my abilities and my finances, where I can go someplace else. And it's okay. It's not even a confrontational situation anymore. Like, I would think to myself, if you're my boss, oh, bless your heart. They say, you don't know how inappropriate it is to say something like that to me. But in terms of, if I need to, let's say that I'm in a situation where my boss, my manager crosses the line, I think it's really important for people to have verbal patterns that help them express what's in their brain, because you know how, Rosemary, when you get emotionally charged, I don't know if when we are
Oh, I've
emotionally
been
charged,
there.
we either speak a lot or we can't find any words at all. I don't know if which side you tend to be on.
I've been both.
Okay, okay. So you know how they
Yes.
they say, there's a lot of different brain studies these days that say different things, but basically what I believe to be true is there's the left-hand side of the brain and the right-hand side of the brain. And in the right-hand side of the brain, we keep emotions. In the left-hand side of the brain, we keep language. And you, especially as a healthcare professional, that's where the language is. When people have strokes, that's where it goes away.
Mhm.
But when we are emotionally charged, it draws us out of where our words live. And so if you don't practice in advance verbal patterns so that you can speak automatically in those situations, chances are what's going to come out is not going to serve you. So you know how, like, when do you have any military in your family, Rosemary?
Yes.
Okay, so you know
Yes.
how, as far, are you military?
I'm not, but my brother was a Marine. My father, all my uncles, they've all served.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Oh, your brother is a
Yes.
Marine. Oh, yes.
Yes. Yes.
My dad too. So you know
Yes.
how, like, they learn to take apart their gun and put it back together, and I
Yes.
guess they do that all the time. So it
Yes.
becomes
Yes.
automatic. And the reason is because when you need to do that, if you ever need to do that, clear a jam or refuel or whatever you call that, you can't stop and think about it, because it's going to be a high risk situation. So it has to be automatic. So that's why they keep practicing that. And
Right.
so if the same principle applies, where when we find ourselves in these situations, so many of us, we're thinking off the cuff, and whatever comes into our brain is what we say. And that is guaranteed going to be like the worst thing we could say in those moments, because our brain is flooding us with drugs to help us either run away real fast or punch them in the face. Neither one of those things are good options. So if I, in advance, practice saying things like my verbal patterns, for if your boss is going to be nasty to you and it's just one time, then it's one time. So I would stop and be like, what's going on with you? Something is different because you don't normally talk to me this way. That's one thing.
Right.
If it's all the time, well, then you have time to prepare for time number 2 or 3. And so I would get those verbal patterns ready for when you are
Right.
going to need them. Something, for example, we always need good lead-in lines. And lead-in lines they could be something such as, like if you were my boss, I might just say something like, Rosemarie. And I like to have props when I'm communicating because some of us, like myself, I get nervous with my hands and I don't know what to do with them. So if I have something that I can grab onto, that really helps me
Yeah.
feel more confident. And then if you use somebody's name and lean towards them and look them in the eye when you're getting ready, when you're leading into the conversation, that tends to break the cycle, like the pattern. And if you can break the pattern of what they're used to and get them to listen to you, it's amazing what you can find out. For example, if I were to say, Rosemarie, generally speaking, if I'm going to be calling my boss out on their behavior, I want to repeat back to them what they said so that they're aware of what I'm talking about. You just said blah, 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 blah. And then, so that's step number 1 and 2. You want to get used to practicing, like having a good lead-in line or a good starter phrase, could just be their name, and then repeating back to them what they just said. And then number 3 could be, you could ask them a question. It could now, Rosemarie, as an you're not just a reporter, you're an investigative reporter as well, right?
Right. And healthcare. Yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
So you know how like those questions really make all the difference. The way you
Yes.
ask questions, it's imperative that you know the difference between, even just the basics, open-ended and closed-ended questions. I would not, for example, if it's my boss, I haven't thought about this in a while. I would not say something I wouldn't ask an open-ended question to get a conversation going. But I might simply ask them something like, are you aware that when you said this happens? Are you aware that's what you just said to me? And,
Oh, wow.
even if you can, when you ask somebody, for example, Mark, you just said XYZ. Are you aware that you just said that to me?
Oh,
At that point, most people will be like, oh my gosh, I wasn't aware. I apologize. And then you can forgive them because we all make mistakes and move along. Sometimes it's okay, so when people say nasty things, they can almost never repeat it. It's very difficult for people to, like, if you were to say, I'm not sure I got that correctly. Could you repeat what you just said? The average person can't do that. And at least they know, like, if this seems to be becoming a pattern, I might start with little things like that, holding people to account and asking them if it's good enough for you to say once. Let's see if you can say it again. And they tend to check themselves. And the thing more than anything else that I want to keep in mind when I'm dealing with my boss or when I'm dealing with my supervisor or manager, if I took the time in the morning to tell myself who I am and why I'm here and what I want, we have to have that compass. If I reminded myself constantly throughout the day of why I'm here and what I really want, then when that person needs to be reminded of who they are or what they're doing here, or maybe they're not aware of the behavior that they're engaging in, if I can come to it from a place where I'm not angry as much as I am trying to help you, because we're all in this boat together, but it looks like you are a little bit lost right now. Even if it's directed towards me, that is not serving you. And keep that mindset, then the
yeah.
verbal patterns come out much more easily. So I would always have a good opening line, even if it's just using their name, and a good question, repeat back to people what they say. That helps buy some time. I might narrate the scene, like, John, here we are sitting in a conference room talking about business plans. And instead of talking about the issue at hand, you're talking about my blah, blah, blah. Do you understand that's what you're doing? You might just want to check people, let them check themselves by narrating the scene. And I say that because a lot of times we can't find the words. If this is new to somebody, it's very difficult to speak up at all. And we
Yeah.
get so nervous that we get tongue-tied. Just look around and say what's going on. That's all you have to do. Explain to somebody what you see going on. That helps you get words out.
Yeah.
Different verbal patterns help you get words out if it's not so stressful. But let's say you're defending your position. Those but
Yeah.
the feel
No.
felt found, those types of
Yes.
things. So those types of things help buy you some time and maintain the floor and build your confidence. Because I think That's a huge deal is we feel if you're not used to, you know, those people who are like, what is it? I'll tell them. I'll tell them. It doesn't bother me. I'll tell them anything. You know, that there's always one person at work because they're so used to it. If you're not used to it, it's really difficult. So start small, but just remember to be loving. And when I say that, I don't mean, I was just talking to somebody last night and we have to decide where our relationships are going. You know what I mean? Like there's many times, like we were talking about now, if it's your boss or your super, sometimes we have to decide where this relationship is going to go. And sometimes when I tell people to, you know, just whatever you do, be loving, they think that I'm saying, stay, be loving, let people walk all over you. Sometimes the most loving thing that I can do is to show you what somebody who loves himself looks like when I walk that way and you stay here. But I can do that in a way that's loving. You know, like I have to tell you, Rosemary, my parents,
I love this.
my mom and my dad, I told you a little bit about them, but they by I'm trying to not say too much. My
That's
mom
okay.
and dad, like most people, got divorced. And my mom felt very guilty about many things that happened in their relationship that she thought contributed to the divorce. By the end of their life, my mom, her new husband, and my dad lived together until the day my dad died as three best friends. And nobody ever thought that would have been possible because my mom's new husband was the man that she had a relationship with, and she was with my dad. And it was, for most people, inconceivable that they would ever be able to reconcile. But what they did was they showed how love can take so many different forms, but the substance, if you're careful with it, can keep growing and getting better every single day. We don't know what it's going to look like. But if you just try to focus on whatever you do, you know, as you leave her, be loving to her, or as you quit this job, do it in a way that's loving, you know, and it will never, ever, ever, it will always serve you. Always, always. No matter what blunders you make and that was a big turning point for me when I realized I don't have to say things perfectly as long as I say things where my grandmother would be proud. Then I can say
Yeah.
whatever I want and I don't have to worry about it so much. You know what I mean? And you can get the words
Yeah.
out.
So, no, you said, first of all, you gave so many great takeaways as far, well, examples. One, you know, how circumstances and some examples that people could, and then some actual steps. I just want to go into a little bit about your courses. Is this a lot about some of the things that you teach in some of your, because I know you're, what I do like, and I said this before, it's all about reclaiming joy and peace and, you know, discovering all of these. How do you help people rediscover those things after dealing with toxic people?
Oh, I see. Like, let's say that they've like left their job and their career, basically.
I actually chose to leave and go to a sister hospital because it was just easier, and so did other people. But yeah, so how do you maybe recover those things? Yeah,
Well, you know, I think my specialty is not, for example, helping people. I'm not a therapist. So
right, got
I
it.
wish I were, but I have noticed that people find a lot of transformation in this type of training. And I think it's because we have to forgive ourselves. And you know, I have a process for everything. Like, I mean, if I'm going to tell somebody I'm sorry or thank you or I love that, whatever, I have to know. This is the way my brain works. I need to know what the steps are. And I think if we can forgive ourselves for whatever happened in the past and how we did or did not deal with it correctly, you know, we tend to carry all of these things and we make everything like a, you know, we drag things down to such a terrible level sometimes. You know, we have all of this shame and this guilt and we carry these things that we should not be carrying because we make
Yeah,
mistakes, you know? And
yeah,
first of all, I know that if you, for example, when you left your hospital,
hmm,
I'm sure it wasn't you. I'm sure it was them. But when we carry things, it's because we're not able to forgive either ourselves or somebody else. And I think
right,
when we practice forgiving, whether it's Okay. I think
No,
I
I
think
get what
forgiveness
you're
is like the
saying with
key.
this, but I feel you're saying forgiveness is the key, and that's because I was going to say, basically, that's almost the first step that somebody can really take to
Yeah,
become more confident in their own communication in work or personally. It's
that's it. And I
basically
think if the way to do the people will ask me, well, how do you practice being forgiving to yourself? What you do
right,
is you practice forgiving all the time. Like when you are, if people, we tend to be one or the other, where we'll either be able to forgive everybody else, but not ourselves, or we forgive
right,
ourselves for everything, but not anybody else. Everybody else, we hold grudges. But whatever it is, if you say, today I'm going to practice being forgiving, I'm going to forgive that person at the grocery store who budged in line, and I'm truly going to forgive them. I'm going to forgive the person who cut me off when I was speaking. I'm going to forgive myself when I made a mistake. If you practice little by little, it is just like any other skill where all of a sudden you become more forgiving, and it's easier to recognize because your brain goes through the process of, well, why? Because you have to justify to yourself, why am I going to forgive you?
right.
Well, because you didn't know, and because you whatever the reasons are. When you start small and you just keep doing it over and over again, guaranteed, because I've seen this so many times, you will be able to, one day you'll wake up and be like, oh my God, I'm a different person now, because
It's like a habit.
it is a habit. And it is
Mhm.
the only thing. I was looking up the definition of forgiveness recently. And it's to give, when I looked it up, means you are expecting something in return. And I found that interesting. But when we give something, the definition of it originally was, I have some expectation of some type of return. The only thing that we can give that we do not have an expectation of return is forgiveness. And I thought, oh, that's it. It truly transforms who you are in a way that nothing else can. And so if you're looking for a new you, like literally, if you are looking to
Yeah.
be transformed in a way that you cannot imagine how you could ever be transformed, to let go of this or to step into that, forgiveness is usually what I have found. The biggest thing that's holding somebody back is they can't let go of something. And why can't they let go? Because they can't forgive. And if you can forgive, just practice small, and all of a sudden you will be shedding this weight that you weren't able to shed before. Even with Stuart Stockmo, you know what I mean? When I was able to all of a sudden do you know, I saw him as an adult and he didn't know what was going on because I dedicated my first book to him. And I saw him and he was like, hello, I'm Stuart Stockmo and I'm da da da. He was selling insurance. And I'm like, Stuart Stockmo! He's like, yes. And he kept talking and I'm like, Stuart Stockmo, I'm Dan O'Connor, I'm Dan O'Connor. He's like, okay, are you interested in blah, blah, blah? And I'm like, you don't get it? I dedicated my book to you. And he's like,
Wow.
I don't understand, but I'm just gonna. And he was totally freaked out. And now I get it. He didn't even know who I was. Like, and I was
Right.
carrying it around my whole life, for 40 years. And I realized that's something I think I gotta let go. I go, and
Wow.
we when that's what it's like when you can truly,
Yes.
the only way to be somebody else, and that's what we're all kind of trying to do, is be a different version of who we want to be,
Yeah.
is to let go of the person that you were. And to do that, generally, is going to require a lot of forgiveness.
Forgiveness, but also because this is all very, I mean, I'm really enjoying this.
Good, me too.
And I do think, yes. But for sake of time, I'm going to wrap some things up, but I could go on and on and Dan, clearly that's, and because there's so many things that, uh, so whatever, everything you're saying is just so relatable. I found you on YouTube, like I shared earlier. What if somebody listening would like to connect you personally and work on these skills? Can you talk a little bit about how somebody can access your courses, reach out to you, where else, or YouTube? Like I said, I found you on YouTube. I really enjoy your videos. Like, how can somebody work with you and practice these things and implement?
Thank you. If you go to Dan O'Connor Training, just I'm going to spell that because it's Dan O'Connor, OCONNOR, training.com. Or if you go to, because that's kind of a mouthful. I didn't choose my name very wisely when I chose my domain name. If you go to YouTube and look up the Wizard of Words, that's you can go there, and then on my homepage there's the links to connect to me. And I try to be pretty accessible especially for people who really are hurting. And I do a little personal coaching. It's something that I don't. It is a premium product, but I do it. I have found smart coaching to be something that's really, really helpful to people where you can send in, let's say, little videos. Like it's kind of like a video chat where it's not so time constrictive and it's much easier for most people. Like, I don't know about you, but all morning I'm thinking, oh God, I got to comb my hair. I got to comb my hair, so you don't have to comb your hair. You could do whatever you want, but I have courses that start from the basics of communication. And what I have found is the reason why I end up talking about forgiveness is because that's just what it evolves into eventually, because we are here communing with one another. And if you're really going to up your communication game, eventually you're going to find yourself in the realm of, metaphysical things. That's just that's how it goes. But I like to start people with very basic, like once it's kind of like, how athletes, they go back and practice the basics every year. We have to start with having things like a danger phrase and power phrase lists so that you can recognize the phrases that are sabotaging you at work. Things like, I have an idea, or things like, I'm sorry, these little phrases that are robbing us of credibility that effective, powerful communicators do not say. And so if we say them, all of a sudden we're put in the category of not powerful communicators. We want to have things like a personal compass so that there's only 3 questions that a personal compass answers. And if you just fill in the blanks, I am blank, I'm here to blank, I want blank. If you can answer those questions in that sliver in time between event and response, that will change what you say, because you have to ask yourself, is what I'm thinking of saying in alignment with those things? If you have really simple tools like that, and I help you develop those first, like we can't go to step 2 until you develop those, you will find lots of huge changes. And then when we start, refining verbal patterns a little bit so that you can start talking like the people who are getting the results that you're wanting to get, then we can move up into the big courses. But I have small courses for the people who are just beginning in terms of recognizing their own power in communication, all the way up to big courses and personal coaching. And the best way to get a hold of me would be YouTube or my website, danoconnortraining.com. If you search it, you'll find it.
Thank you so much, Dan. And so anybody's listening or watching, and there's maybe something that we haven't covered, you can either drop a note for us in the show. We can get it to Dan, or like you said, Wizard of Words, reach out to him directly on YouTube. He said, all his links are there, so you can access him. And and I really like that you said you try to make it accessible for everybody.
Yeah. And especially if somebody needs something and they just don't have any money. I get that. Let me know what you need and I'll make sure that you get it regardless of your budget.
Great.
I always do that.
Thanks so much, Dan. Okay.
Thanks,
well,
Rosemary.
Unfortunately, you're welcome. We're going to have to wrap things up for sake of time, but I have
Rosemary,
a feeling...
I have a feeling we'll be talking again because we're like this.
I feel you, Dan. There's other topics that I'd love to talk to you about. But until then, that's a wrap for today's episode of Second Opinion. A big thank you to Dan O'Connor. Geez, oh my goodness. Big thank you, because I know this helped a lot of people, for sharing his expertise on handling bullies and toxic people, and in both work and in life. I hope you've walked away with not only practical tools, but also a renewed sense of empowerment to tackle difficult situations with confidence and clarity. If you've enjoyed today's conversation, don't forget to subscribe, rate, leave a review, because it helps others find the show. And if you have a topic you'd like for us to explore, like I said, drop us a note. We're always looking for new ideas. I'm Rosemarie. Until next time, take care of yourself, get some rest, and remember, always get a second opinion.